I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all of you and thank you for joining us today and to discuss and learn what it takes to lead transformation successfully from the three extraordinary leaders we have here in Whynde, Susan and Rachel.
Okay, this is all us getting ready, getting the set up, and here is our venue. There's a shard in London and the Thames. Exciting.
As an often incoming CIO, one of the most common phrases you hear is, "Oh, we've tried that before, it didn't work."
We had to shift people from thinking very product-centric and very siloed and very organizationally motivated.
You're not going to transform and still continue to do things the same. I know it sounds really simple, but people frequently miss it.
I wonder what the panel think about the generic skill sets to be successful in transformation and what that practically means within a group of people that have certain role titles and how you kind of make that work.
The most common problem I see with executive teams running transformations is what they wish to achieve and what the team's working on is extremely different. It sounds very simple, but it's not. So how do you ensure that what you want to have done and what's on your piece of paper and what's on your wall is actually being done on a floor? I frequently see organizations who are not willing to prioritize their work, and instead they take a transformation and they add it to the work queues. So what they do is they will provide extra dollars and extra people instead of just prioritizing the work with the existing team and the existing money. What happens here is too much money gets put into the system, and when you get too much money, innovation just doesn't happen. But necessity is the mother of all invention, and I really see this in organizations who can't prioritize a transformation up front. If you want to do a transformation, don't add it to your work queues. Prioritize it as the number one, which means you need to stop doing things and agree as to what the priorities are. So I share these stories of transformations and the concept of agility, because what people think agility is and what agility is frequently different. It's not about processes and people working together. There's many lenses on what agility is and to be fast and adaptive. To be fast and adaptive, you must look at the political plays working in your organization. You must look at the cultural alignment from an agility perspective. And you must decide, is this transformation important enough that I'm going to stop doing some stuff and put it up to the top of the queue?
So I've always thought of transformation less as a portfolio of projects, but actually the opportunity to create a movement which can galvanise and inspire people from right across the business to come together and deliver an outcome far greater than they could on their own. And that's really influenced my leadership style. It's influenced the projects and programs I've decided to lead, and it's also influenced the organizations I've decided to join. And I joined WPP because of its purpose, which is to use the power of creativity to build better futures for our people, our planet, our clients and communities. Also because it was an inflection point of wanting to build a global technology function for the very first time, and largely from a greenfield state. So there's a real opportunity to infuse the roadmap for building out enterprise IT services with our purpose. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the second P in our purpose, the planet. I think there's nothing more purposeful at the moment than sustainability. So at COP26, our CEO made a commitment to get to net zero by 2030 and to get our scope 1 and 2 emissions to zero by 2025. So, really short time frame away. So we immediately, as we were understanding what the macro outcomes for our broader transformation would be, added a sustainability metric as our 6th key outcome of our transformation, purposefully. Because we didn't want it to be an add-on or a bolt-on thing we were doing on the side of the organisation. We actually wanted to infuse it within everything we were doing. And it's had a massive impact because almost accidentally now we've got a lot of great sustainability outcomes happening at scale, and having a ripple effect both into our supply chain and into our partners and clients as a result. So a few examples of things that have popped up just because we've been very purposeful and intentional about saying this is a core outcome, everything we're doing should be driving, are that our digital workplace team, we're currently replacing all of our laptops and mobile phones across the organization over the next 2 years. That's 110,000 devices. They're selecting those devices with circularity as the top criteria. So how are we going to design for refurbishment, for serviceability, for upgradability, and the recycling at the end of life of those devices right up front as we choose the partners we're going to work with. Our architecture team are building sustainability into all the technology selection criteria, into architectural governance, and even into our blueprints, articulating how the change we're delivering across the organization has an impact on sustainability outcomes right up front in the very early design phase. Our FinOps team are baselining and tracking the energy efficiency gain and carbon footprint reduction as we move every single one of our workloads to public and private cloud. Our campus teams are looking at how we can put photovoltaic film on all our windows so we can start to self-generate power, and also how we can convert from AC to DC, getting a 40% energy gain as we stand up our new campuses. And if you look out the window, our next one is being built right outside. And it's also turning into a bit of a team sport. Our creative agencies, one of them is called Landor and Fitch. They actually went to COP27 and won the Hack for Earth competition that they were running with an idea called Small, Small, Big. The idea is that if you can create small digital habit changes, which each individually have a small impact, and then you scale it across your organization, your entire supply chain, it can have a big outcome. So small, small, big. The first idea they had was just to get people to empty their deleted inbox folder at the end of every week. That could save up to 10 million trees equivalent of carbon if you just did that as an organization of our size every single week. Second idea they've had is to stop to remind people not to attach large files as attachments, but to send links to files stored in one location. Similar kind of carbon footprint. So they're very small things, very small behavioral hacks, but if you put a campaign behind them, build a movement behind them, you not only deliver those two outcomes, but you generate hundreds of other ideas that we can just add to the pipeline and deliver with very small effort, very small investments, but big gains to be had. So we really see the impact every day now of linking our transformation to our purpose. Our people show up with a very different energy. It brings divergent ideas. There's a freedom to experiment that we hadn't seen before. We accelerate our outcomes, and we see a greater willingness to collaborate and drive curiosity across the broader organization, which then bleeds into the core programs we're delivering within our transformation. So I think if you get linking purpose to transformation right, it becomes a team sport. If you do it brilliantly, it becomes a movement, and then you get a huge ripple effect off the back. So that's just how I sort of frame transformation.
I've really fallen in love with this idea of how do we take really big ideas and turn them into coordinated action across organizational structures, legal entities, products, geographies. And I've found organizations everywhere around the world that I've worked with them, regardless of sector, regardless of size, regardless of industry, to be equally challenged by turning big ideas into action. So that's very much a passion area of mine. Architecture, business and technology architecture, is an absolutely critical foundation for transformation. In fact, I don't know how you do transformation at scale without it. It basically gives us a way to scope and eat this elephant and keep those pieces coordinated, and gives us a way to orchestrate, business ownership and investment. It also gives us a golden thread from strategy to the architecture, to the execution, to the initiatives and solutions that are delivering. And that kind of gives us this flexible thread to really deliver end-to-end organizational agility. So we can see, is the stuff we're delivering really aligned with the direction? Or if the direction changes because we have pandemics or political unrest or disruption or change our mind, how does that reshape the architecture and the work that we're doing, and be able to do that in a pretty agile way? As humans, we sort of create our reality and we tell stories. And in this example, we had to shift people from thinking very product-centric and very siloed and very organizationally motivated to how do we rally around a bigger why than all of us? In this case, it was the customer. That's how we got people to think differently. And we did enterprise-wide customer experience principles, journeys, personas, that kind of got people really, really thinking that way. I've realized as transformational leaders, what an impact we have on the organizations of the future and the world that we will all live in. I will never forget a moment. I was sitting in Detroit in an office building after hours, working for a very large automotive company that you've all heard of. And I was just leaving a connected car strategy session. And I remember thinking, our vision, is the vision really that I'm going to drive around in my car and go past Starbucks and it's going to order my drink? And am I really becoming this comfortable consumer? And how am I enabling a world as you add up all these transformations, as all these organizations are doing so? And what do we really want to create? So maybe I'll just end by saying the importance of the purpose and the importance of, as organizations, it's very easy to get wrapped up into all the things we're doing and all the things that we're chasing, but are we really delivering products and services that offer value to people and are sustainable and healthy? And as we transform, are we creating organizations that are ethical, sustainable, transparent, and accountable to a bigger picture? And also creating the work in the workplaces that are diverse, inclusive, and I think meaningful to us all.
Culture's a lag indicator and behavior is a lead indicator. You're not going to transform and still continue to do things the same. I know it sounds really simple.
Now, before we start talking about all those details for BioK+,
so if you would like
I want to mention really quickly
you need to
that
start
you can
changing
find
behaviors,
a lot of the information we're going
like
to be
most
talking
things,
about
you
here
need to start with
today
yourself.
in that
And what are you
best
going to do
probiotics
differently?
for
Because the organization that required
and so
you
I'll
to
be sure
work
to link
today
to that in
and
the
the
description box
organization of
below.
the transformation,
And
you
on
need to
that
be
resource,
different.
we actually have this really cool table that we put together
Culture is
where we've
extremely
sort of
important,
subjectively
but
ranked
lag
the 5
indicators
different
and
probiotics
behaviors
on our
need to
list
start
for
changing
how they
today
impact
to make
different
space
symptoms
for working
and
differently,
different subtypes.
and it takes time.
And
to
of
be
course,
able
this
to
is
do
just
this.
our best opinion, so take it for what you will.
Personal experience,
Now,
I think.
adding to that, we also have a free IBS supplement guide that you may want to consider downloading if you want to learn about some of the other strains that we have not featured on our top 5
transformations.
list.
They are whole
And
business
that's also going to be
whatever
linked
you
down
might
below.
be doing. And so I only joined WPP because they were ready to create broader enterprise services and bring 2,200 companies together as a group. If that wasn't the executive's intent, I could not have established a global technology function. So I had to follow that business consolidation rather than trying to build a technology organization for 2,200 separate companies. You just couldn't have done that. So yeah, testing whether the business is ready and is ahead of you in transforming itself to be able to articulate its requirements that you can deliver technology enablers for is absolutely key. I think the other element I always test is what capacity and capability and skills exist in the businesses you're going to land change in, and do you have to lean in more as the transformation agent or team to deposit that ahead of time? Can you benefit from skills and capabilities that already exist, or yes, you're going to have to go out and source that from external to help you along the way? Because time and time again, I see the business units not having the skills, the muscle, the capacity, the motivation that an executive does or the people actually affecting the change, which is largely out of the technology organisation. We talk about growth mindset being in service of, and we mean both of our clients and our team itself, our colleagues across the business and our community and planet, and then human centricity. So we talk about the three things working in concert. But in service of, for me, starts with having a deep understanding of the people you're serving. So our entire IT transformation started with a very deep 6-month-long research project that one of our own agencies actually led as a research agency, to go and interview 4,500 people around their needs, their pain points, their frustrations, their possible opportunities, and what they saw their clients and the market asking for. And we then synthesized that down into a set of problem statements and solution hypotheses. 120 of those interviewees came on board as sort of change ambassadors and helped us co-create our roadmap and prioritize those outcomes. And that's now what we're delivering in our transformation program. But if we hadn't started by saying, actually, we're not best placed to understand what you need, let's be truly in service of you. We need to be curious enough to ask the questions, empathetic enough to really listen to the answers, and drive a spirit of co-creation, solving for the human problems you're telling us you have. We've had a very different set of projects and programs and roadmap now.
And that every transformation has a cost engineering component to it. What's been your experience around that driver and how it affects people through the transformation?
I think the biggest challenge on it is just to own it and be honest with people. Frequently it gets dressed up as something different, and people aren't silly, and it's quite disrespectful to not call out if you either wish to make your organization smaller or cheaper. People get it. It makes sense. And if you provide the logic and the common sense associated with it, then it's okay. So I think own it. If that's what your real objective is, and hiding it, you're never going to get a good culture if you hide stuff like that. So people aren't silly. So yeah, own it and make it transparent.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think all companies are struggling with how to encourage people to come back into their buildings. There's a deep felt philosophy in leadership that people being together is goodness. You develop careers, you sort of immerse yourself, you build social connections, you get the support you need. But I think they're framing it the wrong way. They're talking about being in a certain number of days a week, as opposed to coming in purposefully to achieve an outcome. And I think having our transformation being so broad and so wide and so fast-paced here has very much changed the way our people work. So a lot of the work we do in this building, a few floors down, is very workshop-based. So actually me walking the floor is kind of pointless. I was saying this to you earlier. Everyone's in workshops. Last week we had a fantastic set of workshops for one of our core platforms, WPP Open. Maria, the program manager, there's a back there, and she led an amazing set of workshops in the middle of our floor. The people who were sat around not involved in the workshop just wanted to be in Maria's workshop. It was fantastic, but it created such a great energy, not hiding it away in a room or in a floor up here. Just stick it in the middle. Everyone can see that style. It helps through role modeling to show people different ways of working, different modes of working that do require you to be connected and in a room, and the real power of just getting on a whiteboard, sticking post-its on a wall, going off in breakouts, coming up to the bar afterwards. There's a real sense of connection that's come out of that session, and a huge momentum that will drive the team through the rest of the year. So, as a leader, I want to talk about those moments, not get back in the office 3 days a week.
New ways of working, transparency, I know, is a big thing for you, and having people work in a more agile way does, to some extent, create much more transparency over how work's being done, and potentially empowering people in distributed teams to get that work done. But also it has the potential to lose the non-verbal communication, the personal interaction, connections, and a variety of other things that you get from being in person. What are your experiences around that? Do you have any rules of thumb or ideas about how to address it?
I think the challenge is it's quite a personal thing, and everyone's at different stages of their lives and the journeys, and it's probably about respecting it. I'm 50, my kids are older. I like face-to-face, and I enjoy the energy that I get from everybody. However, I respect not everyone's like that, and they have different needs, and I might have smaller children and school runs, and these are important needs to be met. So I feel, again, honest conversation is good, right? Which is when we get together, we bond differently, we connect better, we have greater, transformations aren't a straight path, and when you're face to face, you can meander in conversations a little bit better. And I think it's just good to talk about the pros and cons of each of them, and whatever the group is, and each group will be different. Sit down, discuss it. What works? We need to do this sort of work. Do we think it's better face to face? Do you need to do it solo? And agree as a group together what works. So open it to the group. You don't need rules from an organization to say, I agree, Monday this, Tuesday this. Put it to the group, explain what the problem is, and ask them to come up with a solution they feel will meet their personal needs and will meet the need of the transformation journey.
The trick with transformation too is it's big, and sometimes these things go on for a long time, so you have to find a way to stay connected. And I think one of the best ways to build trust is actually by demonstrating progress, having open communication, things like that. So if we think about transformations, our really big goals are a series of much smaller goals. I think a really key way to build trust is by doing what you say you're going to do and delivering when you're going to do it, right? A little bit of the proof is in the pudding. Things like communications and updates are one thing, but actually delivering is key, and making those at the right cadence so that you can build that trust. And I think that the trust capital is also, it's built in the hard times. It's built when I've had to go have conversations with clients because something didn't go well, or we missed something, or whatever happened. And those, I found, even though uncomfortable, can become an opportunity to really show who you are and really turn a situation around, and build the relationship even better because you are forthright and you built that trust capital.
Your transformation often has the cost engineering element. You're often asking people to change their roles, to upskill, to even leave the organization as you automate away roles or move roles to lower cost locations, or you change what you do versus what partners do. It's really hard, and we're in the middle of some of that here at WPP right now, and we've made some unpopular decisions around certain partners that the team are struggling with and wondering if the entire plan is now blown up. But what we're focusing on as a leadership team is saying actually the plan is still a plan. Who we're partnering with to deliver some of that plan has changed, but here's the transparent reasons why that has changed. There's broader context, the macroeconomic environment, for example, not wanting to disrupt our businesses right now, and then being able to move forward with very clearly indicated moments of truth that will appear very quickly. So we're shaping up what our people will hear, feel, see, think, and do differently, month by month through the year, that they can anchor onto and start to climb back up the trust ladder. But I think in any transformation, you're on a bit of a trust roller coaster. I think some people will have confirmation bias. They'll be looking for you to fail. They'll be looking for those moments. See, told you it would never work. I've seen it before. They'll always be on that. So you'll have some people who are early adopters and really great promoters going, look, it doesn't matter. Look, we can see that it's happened. This is delivered. They've delivered on their promises. So long as you have a mix of communication styles, a mix of those moments of truth, plus being transparent about the challenges, why you've made changes in direction, the learnings you've got from the things that don't go right, those bumps in the road, you'll be able to bring the majority of people along with you, I think. But not everyone, and don't ever expect to bring everyone, and that's okay.
Well, your point around business architects and the soft skills that matter, that's actually really relevant. It's the more senior you become in architecting things, actually the less you are about the architecture. You're just using it to frame, and it's how do you communicate a vision and where we're going and influence people, and how do you knit together with all the other teams? That's key, because it takes a village to go from strategy to execution. But I think the other side of this is that architecture is not just for architects, and this is important because that business blueprint, connected to our technology blueprints, helps any leader with decision-making, impact, governance, and really I think the shift is how do we think architecturally as organizations, like using that as the backdrop, but doesn't have to be always the focal point, so.
Yeah, when I was starting the journey here, I recognised that the majority of our team that had come together had never really experienced business design or business architecture, and so didn't want to frighten them with this huge framework they had to sort of chew on and figure out what it was. So we started with just some ways of working training that decomposed business architecture and design down to 8 core behaviours, things like problem reframing, ideation, storytelling, etc. And we trained those instead, just to try and take that accessibility problem around business architecture as a profession, as a practice, away from some of those core behaviours. So I completely agree with you. I think we should think about some of the things like agile, DevOps, business architecture, business design, less as whole frameworks that are really hard to consume and take years to become a practitioner of. Break them down to the underlying behaviours and train everybody in the kind of 101, 102 level of those, because they're powerful for anyone who's driving any element of the change life cycle to understand and be proficient in. But I do think business architects and designers have probably the best set of experience around those behaviours and could really lead the way in helping to coach and train others in their squads, in their project teams, as they go forward. So wear the super cape, get out there and start training those soft skills, as we call them, but those core behaviours. Yeah, so I have a phenomenal coach who's an organisational and a behavioural psychologist, and she actually helped me diagnose the sort of 3 behaviours I talked about earlier: growth mindset, in service of, and human centricity. I kind of always knew the way I led, but hadn't really decomposed it down to those 3 things. And then she actually helped me hire the leadership team that really embodied those 3 behaviours to lead our transformation forward. But we speak every week. We spend about an hour and a half together every week. Often we're just noodling on problem spaces, or she's helping me understand frameworks that she's got experience of that could be helpful if we applied them to a particular problem space or a particular team. I have a range of mentors that I go to for many point topics, people who are experts on architecture or experts on design, or and then I have I'm reverse mentored as well. So I mentor 5 people from diverse backgrounds, and I actually learn more from them than they do from me. They probably don't know that, but it's an important part of that mentoring wrap actually as well. So I'm a huge believer in anyone who's needing a support team behind them. You're the person who lands on the field, but it's everyone behind you, gets you ready, gets you fit, helps you have a sounding board, check in, and points out when maybe you're not coping with things as well as you think you are either. They're like, you're a bit grumpy today, or you're feeling a bit stressed, what's going on, how can we help? So yeah, it's just great having that check and balance. In fact, my coach has a practice called banking, and every quarter we sit down and talk about the ahas, what are the achievements, what are the hopes, and what are the ambitions for the quarter ahead. And she makes me bank the achievements, because I think often as leaders you're too busy racing to the next thing and forget to say, actually, that was pretty darn good. What did I learn about that? What did I learn from it? What can I take forward to my next round of things, whatever they might be? So definitely banking is a great practice.
As we look to some of the difficult sides or parts of transformation, change fatigue is rife, everywhere really. And it makes me think from a consulting perspective, having run a consulting business in this area for a long time, having a team of consultants who are constantly having to show up and be giving 100%, 150%, be giving the energy and trying to step into to really deliver on that value proposition is pretty hard when you're doing change all the time, moving from site to site. And you've run a lot of consultants in your history. I'm curious about what you've done in that space and what your experience has been running those consulting teams in terms of resilience.
Indeed, we're out there always doing the change and expected to be on the A game and 150%, as you're saying. So I think 2 of them are sort of related to individuals. One is I'm a really big believer in understanding people's strengths and really what brings them joy, what they enjoy doing, even by, my team's, not financial, but like the actual, strengths instruments, right? So we know like who's where and what are their strengths. And then being deliberate about matching that to their work. Because if you can work in your zone of genius and where you're happy, that makes work easier. Second, I think as individuals, we always want to be developing, right? Just always feeling like we're progressing forward in a way that's meaningful to us. So really investing in the development plans that were related to my consulting practice, as well as what individuals want to move into. Maybe someone is working in architecture and they want to move into experience, right? Whatever it is, or strategy, supporting that. But I think the bigger conversation is also making sure that the consultants can work at a sustainable pace and setting the right expectations with clients. So that comes down to scoping, right? And what we're going to deliver and when, and bringing it back to a bigger picture of, it feels really good to deliver a lot of things fast and promise that, but we are going to go faster over time if we slow the pace down, make it sustainable, make it reasonable, right? And that can require some hard conversations with clients, or, the fact that we need to recharge. So that means we're out of the office on Fridays and we have to honor that and not schedule a bunch of client calls, or that we take a certain week off to do development. So it's all those things, but also creating the environment for consultants to succeed. And one big thing I learned is setting the example, because I always used to tell my team, you don't have to work, you don't have to do what I'm doing. And they say, yep, but you're sending emails at 4 a.m. So we really think that that's what we're supposed to do. So that was also another big lesson. You got to set the example as well.
As an often incoming CIO, one of the most common phrases you hear is, oh, we've tried that before, it didn't work. So your job is to talk about not necessarily the what, but how the how is different. And spend enough time listening empathetically as to why things didn't work last time, and make sure as you talk about your shift in how you're going to solve for those issues that didn't allow the change to land the time before, but then draw a line under it, because you can't keep doing that, otherwise you'll never move forward. You'll just be sympathizing with people who want to stay stuck. You've got to say, actually, no, I've explained why the how is different. This is the direction we're going in. We now need your commitment to come with us. And if you don't want to commit and you don't want to move forward, that's fine. There's a different conversation to have there. And then your job as a leader is to make sure you've got the right capacity, got the right partnerships, you're removing the roadblocks along the way, so the change fatigue doesn't increase. It actually starts to decrease. And those moments of truth are really important to build that trust capital, but also build the momentum and to re-energize and help people put those deposits back in their energy banks. Make sure you're recognizing and rewarding people along the way. You have those celebratory moments, and you have moments to decompress actually and just take time out. So I think change fatigue is a constant watch, it's a constant curve. But I always start with talking about why the how is different this time and why we think we're going to get a different set of outcomes, and making sure we land a couple of moments of truth early to build that trust. Yeah, it's a tough one though.
And I think that the whole point of pacing is a really interesting one, because I think it binds together a lot of the issues that we're talking about here. Because if we're going to design for sustainability in the role, we have to create the envelope and the space for people to adjust as they step through each stage. If we're going to be inclusive, we have to allow and understand that some people are going to go on a learning journey and they're going to need time to go on that journey. And we're going to have to create a safe space for them to actually travel that pathway. And we're going to need to understand that our partners, if they're going to be with us for the journey, are going to need to have a break as well and operate at a pace that can work. So sort of framing that up in a way that actually works, is probably the ultimate leadership. And I think that that's related to sort of a human-centered approach and a humanistic approach to transformation. AI is about to change the world. So we're on the cusp of some major changes. And so we've just been in a decade of transformation, driven by a variety of things like the pandemic. And we're facing into some extraordinary changes in society through AI and the need to demonstrate leadership as we step into that. Rachel, we're having a great conversation about this before, and I'd just love for you to share your views on AI and how it's likely to impact things, at least as you see it, for the next 6 months even, or a year ahead.
Yeah, I think we've seen such amazing acceleration over the last 6 to 9 months, just with the sophistication of the models, the sheer volume of data that's been used to train these models, and then the rush for technology companies to make their announcements, and even their actual general release of their products is sort of 9 months ahead. There's just been a race of announcements rather than a race of actual real functionality we can all sort of touch at scale. And anyone who's gone to the OpenAI website and tried to do anything probably has to wait for 6 hours of cycle time. We're in a queue. Even their infrastructure hasn't scaled that underpins it. And I think it's our job as organisations to bring in the sense of measured pace, of responsibility, of making sure we put the right guardrails in place, we put the right change and adoption wrap in place, the right safety measures to assure our clients and their customers and the world at large that, first of all, AI is for augmentation. It's about human and the machine, not one of those being superior to the other. It's about applying it where it makes sense. It's valuable. It's delivering a societal outcome that's positive. That we understand the consequences of applying AI in any space, and we create the time and space and investment to reskill people whose roles or part of roles are going to be eliminated or changed. That we understand the new roles and skills and capabilities we have to build to monitor, to measure, to assure lack of bias, that we are deploying it responsibly and ethically, that we understand the implications, that we are layering in design and thoughtfulness from the outset, and that our regulatory frameworks and our nation states can actually catch up and start to put in place the measures they need to assure that we're actually being responsible. So yeah, I think the acceleration is what worries me most, that we're getting ahead of that thoughtfulness, that responsibility, and I think it's only us as organisations, if we temper adopting it the right way, we're probably going to be a little bit of the handbrake that's necessary. If not us, who else?
Mm-hmm. How big is the wave, do you think?
I think it's extremely high. I think it's extremely broad. I think there'll be very few aspects of our industry actually that will be untouched, very few roles in our organisations that will be untouched, because I think we're seeing it being fused in general collaboration and productivity technology, so every role will be affected at some point, but I think the organisations that are developing those products aren't putting enough thought into the change and adoption investment they're going to make to help us all adopt things safely.
We have new ideas that come into our purview, right? And those things have to be fit in strategically, or they could be drastically changing our business models, technology becoming, new strategic opportunities, or they could be changing, certain things about our business. But to your point, I think we have to weigh those and first understand, not just reacting to, oh, it's another technology, oh, it's another this, but how do we thoughtfully integrate that into strategies and what it means to the architecture and design of an organization.
A lot of organizations are tired of the very large transformation programs that trundle along for sort of 3 to 5 years and never quite deliver the outcomes, because the outcomes have changed by the time you deliver the thing. So I think we'll see a more granular approach to transformation. I think we'll see transformation outcomes decomposed down to much smaller units. I think the squad, the product approach to delivering change will be on the ascendance. I think we're seeing some early successes of that across many industries. I think it will become more and more a team sport. I mean, if we just look at the squad we've assembled around thinking around the impact of AI for WPP, it's got CTO, CIO, representatives from all our different agency businesses. It's got legal counsel, it's got procurement, it's got finance in it. Virtually every function in our organisation has a voice around that table, because these new and emerging technologies have such a breadth of impact that you can't give that to one part of the organisation to lead the transformation around. So I think that team sport, that multidisciplinary approach is going to be even more required as we go forward. And I do wonder if that will extend out into your external stakeholders. So why would we not be involving our clients in that conversation, our regulators in that conversation, as we think that through, our auditors, the communities we sit in, the other governing bodies that we're even part of as a single organisation. So I hope to see new ecosystems emerge to tackle with some of these emerging technologies that we'll have to weave into our transformations as we go forward.
And this has been a perspective, I think, of architecture for a long time, the idea of the extended enterprise. So, how do all parts of the value chain come together and collaborate to produce an outcome, and how do you remove the barriers and make it more seamless? And so I guess in terms of the future, from your perspective, Whynde, do you see the approach changing?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I actually think you nailed it. I think business ecosystems coinciding with what is value in a digital world and in a circular economy and a sustainable world. I think that is, and certainly architecture can help us knit those players together for the bigger picture. But I do think that is that's the big focus. And how do we make chains into circles, right? And have organizations working together in different ways, not just for circular economy, but because it creates new value. And of course, we know with all sorts of new organizing constructs as well that go beyond the boundaries of any one organization.
How satisfied are you with the progress that's being made on diversity and inclusion? Where are we at on that journey with you, Whynde?
Yeah. So speaking from architecture anyway, enterprise architecture, we have a ways to go. There was a statistic that really woke us up about a year ago, I guess. And that is that there's about 13% of women in enterprise architecture roles. And we really think that, this conversation, all the transformation, all the change that, we need architecture more than ever before in design as organizations. So we need more people in that field. So we do need to change that. So I guess maybe not too happy, but where I have to say, I have been blown away and delighted is as we formed this global initiative, Women in Architecture, the response from the world, the response from men and women is unbelievable. It's like we are absolutely bonding together in action and excitement to, in earnest, change this. Like there's no lip service going on here. People are really jumping in with action. So we have a ways to go, but we are just starting our Women in Architecture journey.
Yeah, more generally in technology, I think we've still got a long way to go. I think there are some fantastic bright spots. I think there are some great organizations who are building the right employee value proposition, the right visible commitments and set of outcomes from actions they're taking around EDI, who are infusing diversity and inclusion and equity and accessibility into the work they do for their clients, and are spreading their wings to influence up the supply chain, down the supply chain. And people are actually flocking to those organizations. I mean, we've been building a lot of new teams, a lot of new capabilities here and overseas, and we've not had any issue attracting a diverse talent with the right gender mix, the right ethnicity mix, the right neurodiversity mix, LGBTQ plus mix. We are attracting people in the ratios that represent the cultures in which we're present. But I think we've worked super hard on talking about our position on EDI and accessibility as an organisation, as an industry, and providing that voice to our clients as well. But I think if you don't do that, you will struggle because the pools you're trying to attract talent from are still very small. So you have to do something quite exceptional, quite extraordinary to be able to attract the talent you need, particularly those entering the workplace now and deciding where they want to give part of their lives to. They're far more discerning. It's far higher up their criteria for choosing who to give their time to. Yeah.
And when we get it right, how is that going to feel different? Like what will work be like for us?
I think you'll just get a better representation of the people you're in service of. You'll get the diversity of voices that'll bring the people you're designing for to the table. You'll get the richness of perspectives. You'll get an acceleration of innovation and ideas from that richness of background, of experience, of gender, religion, sexuality, whatever. That'll all be in the melting pot. So we'll just get better and better outcomes in an industry that thrives on creativity. We have to be naturally diverse to deliver great creative outcomes, but also to design brilliant new products, campaigns, services for our clients.
We muse a lot about the impacts of AI and the opportunities that that's going to create. And one of the things that's somewhat exciting about it, putting aside some of the frightening things about it, is that the potential to democratise a lot of creative tools and capabilities, and the possibility that people who are musical but not necessarily experts in music can actually be creators, and in art and in writing and in a variety of areas. And if these tools are used, they can actually enhance their capacity to be creative and to share. And one of the things that we've come to is this view that the opportunity of a fully diverse and inclusive environment is about harnessing the full creative fabric and intelligence of all people, and how they might actually make that contributions. I think we'll wrap up, and I'd like you to all join with me in thanking our guests. Thank you.